Ladies and gentlemen, Violent Games here. Today I want to do a Let's Talk on the Nintendo Switch's Pro Controller. Thank you, Lechki, for letting me know that this controller even exists. I had no idea that this peripheral was even real. When people were talking about Pro Controller, to me, I thought they were talking about the extension for the Joy-Cons that adds handles that kind of mimics a controller, but there's actually a peripheral available for the Switch that mimics basically an Xbox One controller almost completely. There's a few nuances to it, being that the face buttons are actually slightly larger, which are really nice, and the triggers are actually much lower, and they're not tension triggers. Tension triggers being the fact that when you push them down, there's like, you can push them down halfway and sometimes fully. It really mimics the trigger of a gun, but for certain games, tension triggers will be implemented to do certain things, so there are no tension triggers on it. I actually like this design because more often than not when you're trying to, use a competitive controller, you end up having to get trigger stops for it anyhow, so I actually really like the design of this controller as far as the button layout goes. Now, there's a few things that I don't like about the controller's design. I don't really like the directional pad that much. It does feel kind of cheap, and also the rumble feels really cheap as well. The only complaint I have outside of that is the controller's price point. It is a $69.99 controller minimum, which is more expensive than any other third-party controller, being the Xbox One or the PlayStation 4 controllers. So with that being said, guys, as someone who likes to play Paladins on Nintendo Switch, how competitive is this controller compared to the Joy-Con controller? You guys, it's not even fair. They don't stack up next to each other at all. Having this controller is a straight up competitive advantage, and one of the biggest reasons for that is something I honestly did not expect, but we'll get into. But basically, if you go up against someone who is using a Joy-Con controller, their thumbsticks are much smaller than yours, have a much smaller radius, and if they're not using control freaks on those Joy-Cons, like, they're just not competitive at all in comparison to the Pro controller. And the button layout being more competitive prevents you from doing misclicks. One thing that would happen to me when I was playing Paladins on the Joy-Con controller is I would randomly activate my ultimate, which you know how frustrating that can be in a hero shooter when you just whiff an ultimate in a corner for no reason because you just fat-fingered a button. This controller feels amazing in your hands compared to that Joy-Con controller. The functionality is just far superior. Look up any other review on this controller and you're going to get what I'm saying. But one thing that really makes this controller a must-buy for me, and that I fell in love, I cannot put this controller down, was one, the motion controls that exist in the PlayStation Joy-Con controller are also present here. I think that's why the price point is actually higher. And two, the battery life is absolutely insane in this fucker. It lasts way longer than a PlayStation 4 controller. You can leave it unplugged for like almost days and it will still hold a charge, which is very impressive to me. Now, the final thing, and this is my favorite feature that I did not expect, but I had to try it just for the science of it. You can actually put PlayStation 4 control freaks on your controller. You guys, this is an equalizer between the Xbox One and the Nintendo Switch. You absolutely need to have this if you were going to be playing any form of crossplay, whether it's Paladins or Fortnite or I don't know what other games. I think those are the only two as far as I'm aware. But if you were going to be playing, especially with Xbox players, you need to have this, because what control freaks allow you to do is, one, they're going to extend the life of your controller because you're not going to wear out the rubber. And one thing that's ironic about the PlayStation 4 control freaks is they actually fit better on this controller than they do the PlayStation 4 controller, which makes no sense from a design standpoint, right? But basically, the grips on the bottom of the control freak themselves actually kind of push down the rubber on the thumbsticks of the PlayStation 4 controller. They actually don't do that on the Switch. They just snap on like a glove. It's really crazy that that is the case, but I thought it was something worth mentioning. But anyhow, the advantages of the Control Freak is that 1, it adds life to your controllers because you don't wear out the rubber, and 2, it allows for precision aiming. You can raise your sensitivity on your controllers, giving yourself a more variety of turn speeds, making subtle movements with your fingers as opposed to dramatic movements with the shorter sticks. A lot of people aren't used to this at first, but if you get used to it, it is a real competitive advantage. One thing that I should mention about the way I play Paladins, I actually use no aim assist whatsoever, and I'm able to actually hit my targets. I'm able to aim my projectiles, I'm able to aim ahead of my targets and make sure that my projectiles land as slow moving as they are. And this controller, when I used it initially, I really wish I would have recorded this match. I didn't die. My kill to death ratio was like 27 or something retarded. I completely carried my team because I'm assuming they were using Joy-Cons. And you could really tell how much some of those players were struggling. They might have either been playing on the mobile configuration or the Joy-Con controller configuration. And this is a raw competitive advantage. Because of how close it is to an Xbox controller, this is fair. You could play against an Xbox player, and as long as the frame rate is the same, you both see each other, it's a competitive fight. If you are playing any competitive game online, or any multiplayer online that involves player versus player, this is an absolute must-have peripheral. Thank you again, Lechkey, for making me aware of this controller. I cannot put it down. I absolutely love this controller, and I'm really impressed. I really don't have much else to say about it. I think I covered the basis of everything you would need to know. The only thing that really sucks about the Switch controller, though, when it comes to what mods you can put on it, I'm so glad you can get the thumbsticks. That is a game changer, but the fact that you cannot put any paddles on the Nintendo Switch Pro controller yet is kind of a hindrance. However, if the Switch continues to sell and be a popular peripheral, I could see someone like Collective Minds making a strike pack for this, or some other company making an attachment where you can add back paddles to it. But we'll have to wait and see, because Nintendo is Nintendo, and they like to keep things Nintendo. I'm sorry, that sentence had to Nintendo the fuck out of you, but that you get what I'm saying. They're kind of like Apple in the way they don't really like to work with third-party peripherals, so we'll have to wait and see. Anyways, guys, this is Violent Games signing off. I hope you learned something about the Nintendo Switch Pro controller. Like I said, if you are playing any online multiplayer game, this is an advantage, 100%. I would almost argue in general it is, especially if you're an adult who has nice large hands and really wants to have big thumbsticks with Control Freaks. It's just a must-have. Anyways, I'm going to reiterate if I go on too long. Violent Games signing off. Remember, guys, post comments, because I read them, and this comment from Lechkey really changed the way I play Paladins on Switch, and I am so thankful for it. Pissing off.
Killing spree. Victory. Quiet. I am the greatest. Woohoo! Overtime.